I'm Dr. Jeff Kaplan, and for over 30 years I've traveled the globe from Dubai to Moscow and Johannesburg, from Singapore to Shanghai and Istanbul. I've studied the world's best businesses and the people that run them. But something is very different now. From the boardroom to the break room, there's a growing realization that our relationship with work is broken. But it's not too late. You still have a choice. Hold on to the past and struggle to survive, or join the willing, change, and thrive in the world of tomorrow that's already arrived. So if you're willing to think different, willing to work different, willing to change at the speed of now, then you're willing to win. Hello, and welcome to a very special edition of Willing to Win. I'm Jeff Kaplan.
And I'm Tara Thomas Getman. We are so excited to be on location in front of Great Clips and The Joint Chiropractic. These are two franchise businesses that the gentleman joining us for this special half hour started and now is expanding, and now Jeff is part of the business equation. We're talking about Jerry Akers. He and his family are successful franchise operators in the Midwest, and Jeff, you and Jerry crossed paths and now are business partners. Tell us how you met Jerry and how this all started.
Well, basically, I went to one of Jerry's salons and shared, as you do with your stylist, they ask, what's your job? What do you do for a living? And at that time, I was beginning the writing process for the Willing to Win books. And so I shared with her, I'm writing about big business. I'm writing about the way business should be run. It should be more human. It should be more, engaging and more supportive of the community and so forth. And she goes, really, that's amazing. The owners of our franchise fit that description, to the T. Here's a card. You should give a call to our owners, Jerry and Mickey. They're great people. And I thought, oh, that's fantastic. I work in big boardrooms and tall buildings, and I fly jets across the world to go and deal with global businesses. This isn't the kind of business I want to write about, right? This isn't real business. So I went on about my business. I sort of got rid of that card and never followed up at all. A year later, I was in another one of Jerry's salons, unbeknownst to me, and I had the same sort of conversation. Only the stylist this time, when she recommended I call Jerry, handed me the card, and when I went to take the card from her, she says, no, you really need to call him. And it was just something about the way she said that this time, instead of filing that card in the circular file as I'd done a year before, I picked up the phone and arranged for an interview with Jerry, thinking I might be able to get, 250 or 500 word spotlight in Willing to Win on the option of potentially doing a franchise business, that we could write about, but certainly nothing more than that. I went down, got a chance to interview Jerry that was supposed to go for half hour. Several hours later, I emerged from his training center and realized that this was something more. Not only had I met somebody that would become a great lifelong friend, but what he had to say about business, the way he had built his business and its impact on the community were absolutely vital parts of the American economy. I mean, when you think about it, franchise business is small business, but on the aggregate, it is the largest employer in the country. So many people get their living or gain support from the franchise industry. I had to know more, and before you know it, we were on a journey that's taken half a decade now, and we're about to celebrate in just a few days with the launching of Willing to Win, the book that is basically
Live It to Own It.
I'm sorry.
Willing to Win is coming soon. Willing
to Win is this show. I'm telling you, everything's exciting. The number two. But no, Live It to Own It is the book that basically describes the entire process. If you've ever thought about franchising or know somebody who has, this is a great book for somebody to go through and say, what are the decisions I need to make? What are the questions I need to ask? And in the end, the purpose of this book is not to get you to be a franchisor. The purpose of this book is to make sure that whatever you decide, it's right for you. And that's what we're really excited about.
Well, we're so excited to be launching this official, now in print publication, 5 years. And now for it to culminate in the publication this November of Live It to Own It being released, so you too can be a franchising success. We have to bring Jerry in. What did you think when Jeff showed up, this ball of energy, and then how did it translate into, yeah, let's write a book together?
Well, let me describe the picture. I was sitting at my desk. I had my phone on one side, my iPad in the middle, my computer on the other, and I was working all three of them. And I'm like, okay, I committed to 15 minutes with this guy. Let's just get it over with and get him out of here so I can get back to work, right? And then we became engaged. And we learned we had some things in life that were in common, and before long we discovered we were kind of brothers under the skin. But really, you know, his engaging questions and the fact that he was very open with the thought that many of the things I had developed in my small business were things larger business should be using. So that just kind of drew me in. He's got that habit, that magnetic personality, drew me in. And I had to answer questions, and I still remember to this day getting up and turning around to my whiteboard, and 2 hours later we're still drawing sketches on the whiteboard with what was going on in our business and how other businesses could use it. So that was what got me going, and I did not have 2 or 2.5 hours that day to commit, but we put it in anyhow, didn't we?
Yeah, it's the only interview I've ever had that involved a whiteboard, and I had more work to do when I left than when I got there. So it was awesome.
This conversational and sincere friendship translates well onto the pages of Live It to Own It. It's an easy read. It's very entertaining because so much of it are anecdotal but true stories of Jerry and Mickey and their family's journey in the franchising world. We have to mention that this isn't just two Midwest guys coming up with a book. This book has now been affirmed as the go-to franchising book in the industry. Peter Holt, who is the president and CEO of The Joint Chiropractic, and Rob Goggins, the president of Great Clips, both have contributed to Live It to Own It to really put their stamp on why this is going to be such an impactful read for anyone who's ever considered franchising, or for the franchisee out there who, like Jerry and Jeff, want to expand and grow their footprint. We have to ask you, Jerry, how does one even start? Because we've all been there when we drive by a franchise location and then we think, hey, maybe I could do that. So how does one get started in franchising?
Well, you have to have that drive and desire to do something different than do a 9-to-5 job or something like that. And then once you get beyond that, there's a lot of research that goes into it if you do it the correct way. There's thousands.
Now, with the internet and all the tools that are available today, that's not what was available when you were doing your research. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that really high-tech way that you went about doing your own franchise research?
You mean when I was sitting in my Nissan Sentra in a parking lot on breaks from work, and I had business magazines with 3 colors of highlighter marking, you know, whether it was a really good opportunity or a really bad opportunity, putting notes in the margin, and my accordion file that I kept those things in for 25 years before I made the final decision
for you.
Really quick. But the bottom line was that was a very laborious process at the time, and we don't have to do that anymore. But, you know, one of the fears that I have about the internet being so readily accessible and people being able to do it quickly is they do it too quickly.
Yeah.
They've got lots of information, but it doesn't give you time to process and try and decide the ins and outs of it. And if they're working with a broker or something like that, if they get to the point where they're considering buying one, that could end up being kind of a snap decision, and they'll invest a lot of money and perhaps not do well with that business. So the book is set up so that they can go through that process of investigating and researching, but also what are the questions to ask, what are the thought processes to go through, what are the red flags that should come up when you're in those conversations, just to make sure you actually pick the right one for you that's going to take care of you and your family and your employees for years to come.
Absolutely. You know, one of the biggest issues in business is you never know what you don't know. And that's really what this book is about. And although we were really lucky to get, you know, Peter Holt and to get Rob to be a part of the foreword and the afterword in the book, within the book, there's no mention of any particular brand, right? This is not about trying to convince somebody that they should become a franchisee, right? It's instead about making a decision that you're comfortable with and knowing what to expect so that when you get there, you feel a little bit more comfortable along the way, because it can be very scary, especially when you've got, you know, a good portion, if not all, of maybe your life savings invested in this idea that you want to start your own business.
We caught up with Ellen Latham, who in middle age found herself jobless as a single mother and decided starting a franchise business is the right next step for her. So when you think about just the passion that you have talk about why it's so important that we align our passions with our careers and our work pursuits, because clearly that set you up for phenomenal success.
Yeah, look, I think as human beings, we only have so much energy to give. And if you're someone who, you're a parent, you're a partner, you're a daughter, you're a son, whatever the case may be, and you're looking at, finding the career, the path for you, the life path for you in the world of work. You've got to have that passion that keeps that, flame lit. Otherwise, it's going to go out. And that's what, I was so fortunate to have a father that he was a football coach and phys ed teacher at my local high school. So as you can imagine, he was very much about passion in regard to what he did in life. And that is something he told me from a young age, is that make sure whatever your life path is, that you have great passion for it, because you're going to spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of energy in it. And you're going to want, on those exhausting days and those exhausting moments, to have something that's sitting there that's keeping that flame lit. Because it's when the flame goes out that you really become lost in life. And he goes, I've been so fortunate to be able to continue coaching through all the decades of my life and teaching phys ed. And did he make a ton of money? No. But this man absolutely exited with his flame lit. So that was something that I saw and said, I have to make sure that that is something that I do as well.
When you think about going from being a fired single mom to a billionaire, billionaire's entrepreneur in the franchise world, have you ever had the chance to talk to those people who all those years ago, counted you out? Did you have your paths ever crossed, people from your past who now say, wow, look at what Ellen did, look at the success that she became?
It's so funny you said that, because no, I have not personally, but my accountant is my very good friend. He's been my friend at that job that I got fired. He would take my spin class. So we've always, so he was like, someone who, when I was making $50,000 a year, he did my accounting, even though he did big business accounting, but because we were friendly. So we've maintained the friendship, and he's been my accountant through all of this process. And about 3 months ago, he said he was at a restaurant and he was about 4 tables away from the guy who let me go from that job. And he said, I so wanted to send him over a bottle of champagne and just say thanks. But he goes, I thought it would be too much to explain. I said, I'm glad you didn't, but it was funny.
What a great story. I love that. What is your advice to other women in particular when we think about any kind of industry, even the franchising world? There are a lot of male executives, a lot of male leadership, yet here you are having incredible success as a woman. So what is your advice specific to women in terms of taking on those big jobs and not being intimidated by the boys club?
Yeah, because let's face it, it is a boys club. And I was very fortunate that my partners, who are men, were unbelievably respectful. And you did have to earn that. I did notice that out of the gate. So you have to be confident. You have to walk in with phenomenal posture, shoulders back, head up. You have to have a voice that projects in a very direct and confident manner. Those are just little physical things that, because I come from the physical world, I found that definitely works very much so. Where sometimes, women who may be a little bit more timid and a little bit more softer might not come across that you need to come across. I don't know if you know a little of this, because I'm so into the science of things. Men excrete more dopamine and testosterone. And those hormones really are about being a little bit more aggressive, being more into competitiveness. So when I research kind of even some of that science of men and women, it's very interesting how we are kind of geared toward that, even hormonally, nevertheless, maybe being brought up, and maybe it's different now with little girls, but my generation, I'm 65 years old, being brought up as young girls. So I think that you have to go in with that strength, with that confidence. You have to be an intentional learner. And what I mean by that is you impress people by your knowledge. Okay, you are always on that path of learning. And even at this later stage in life for me, I am still fascinated by learning more about physiology, learning about behavior, psychology, things that will help me in my company, but also help me when I'm projecting who I am to others. And that projects a certain strength because it's like, oh, wow, she kind of knows what she's talking about in regard to that. So never stop the learning, ladies. Keep an intentional learning program going. Be your own mentor. A lot of times we always say it's great to find great mentors, but a lot of times it's been challenging for women to find other women mentors. I did not have any women mentors. Luckily, I had some men who were terrific in my life over the years in the work world, who were very respectful of me, and they became a kind of mentorship toward me. But the reality is I created my own self-mentorship.
Like Ellen, you might find yourself in a pivotal moment in your career and your life. And like Jerry and Jeff, you may never have planned to be a franchise owner, but talk about the steps that you will walk people through and live it to own it to determine, is this the right next step?
Well, absolutely. I got to tell you, and I love her story, right? You know, fired at 40 and at 54 creates her own franchise model. So it's not, I mean, like, we're going into a franchise business. Jerry's accomplished, building an entire, chain of franchises. That's a big accomplishment. She just went for the gold. She created the entire model, and she's got over 1,000 units. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And that's what we discuss, in the book, all the things that you're going to have to go through in terms of figuring out whether or not franchising is right for you. Everything from just going through the research and getting a feel for what are the mechanics, of the franchising business, right? You've got to have, money and financing in place. How does that work? When do you write this check? And when you write that initial check, are there other expenses? Because there are, right? It's not just buying the license. You also have to do the build out. You have to hire folks. They're going to be lean months, and you're not going to make money, right away. What are all the things that you need to expect along the way? And Peter Holt said it best on a conference call that we were at a few months ago, when he said the most successful franchisees that he'd ever seen are those that understand the franchise business isn't about getting rich quick, right? Because I know you got rich the first day, right? but for a lot of other people, they have to wait a little longer. He said that franchising is the perfect model for people that appreciate patient capital, right? And that's really important, especially if you're middle-aged and maybe you don't have a big nest egg. So if you don't have a big nest egg and you're in your 40s or 50s, you no longer can leverage with the miracle of compound interest because you don't have the time for your money to grow in a very, very safe fashion. You've got to find a way to put your money to work, but in a way that you can control and nurture and use your talents to build. Franchising is a perfect choice. So we go through that step by step, chapter by chapter.
Well, the other thing, guys, is so many franchisees, when they're talking to business brokers, and they consider this franchise business as a business in a box. That's a term that's thrown around quite often. And I can just imagine them going to IKEA and buying, this piece of furniture and getting down the floor and trying to piece it together and make a couple calls to the help desk. And they imagine that they're going to take this business in a box that they bought, set it up, and then put a manager in, and they're going to walk away and it's just going to print money. Well, in reality, that doesn't happen. In reality, you have to be engaged, you have to work on it, and that's what we talk about in here. We talk about all the steps and when you can start stepping away and letting other people take care of it for you. But to Peter Holt's point, this is a patient capital business. You're going to take off, you're going to do well, but it's still going to take time, and it's going to be a home run when it's done.
Well, so complex, yet so worthwhile for people like yourselves who find success in the franchise model, being your own boss, and then ultimately leaving a legacy for your family. We want to bring in Matt Haller. He is a friend of Jerry's, an International Franchise Association president and CEO of a group that Jerry and so many other franchisees benefit from, support, and help to educate others through. Let's hear what he has to say about Live It to Own It and why he believes information like this is so vital when you make that decision to consider franchising.
I just have to ask you to speak to the book and its necessity for helping people make such a life-altering decision.
Well, Jerry is an incredible teacher, and I think somebody that has built such an incredible family business with such a great brand. People can learn a lot from that experience, and often the best stories that are out there are told by those sort of that don't think they have a story to tell, and it takes a certain type of writer to kind of draw that out. And that's exactly what's there. It's both personal story as well as kind of practical advice for carefully considering not just the beginning of like what this could be, but also considering how to build the right management team, how to hire the right people, and how to think about the end also of retirement and what to do about the business in terms of passing it on, like he has with his children. So not everybody's always thinking about those types of things at the outside of their franchise investment. And I'm a big believer, and it's sort of a theme throughout IFA. More information about potential ownership in a franchise is advantageous to everybody. If you can ferret out people that are hesitant about getting into a franchise relationship with a brand on the front end, it can stave off, issues that might arise, later down the line. And that's kind of a message that, some, aren't always totally comfortable with, because, there are people in franchising that, they exist to only sell franchises, right? And, they have a sales goal to meet, and that's all well and good. There's a lot of people out there that are worthwhile franchisees. But, like I said, it's not always for everybody. And, the best franchisors, it's like a marriage, right? There's going to be a little bit of a give and take. Communication is really key. And just like knowing with full transparency what you're getting into at the outset of the relationship is really, really important to it being successful on the other side.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for those comments. When you think about a prospective franchisee, would this book be one that would be a recommendation that you think would be worth their time?
I can't think of a person that's done better in franchising with a great brand than Jerry, and couldn't recommend it highly enough.
That's so perfect. Thank you for that quote. Also, when you in general give your elevator speech, if you're talking about what you do in IFA, how do you sort of encapsulate why not only is franchising important, but it's very impactful to the economy of any country that has a lot of franchise, success?
Well, we say in franchising, you go into business for yourself, but not by yourself. And, that's the strength of the brand that's there. And there's not only a team of people there that are there to support you, as well as, tens, hundreds, thousands in some systems of other franchisees that are literally doing the exact same thing that you're doing. And so think about that built-in network of peer support to do, to learn from, to share ideas, things that are working, not working. It's just an incredible resource for somebody that's going into business to have.
So, Jerry, you have turned from franchisee into supportive franchise coach, right? You and Jeff both talk about that in the book, the importance of seeking advice from others, professionals. And in your case, a coach even kept you from initially expanding.
Yeah, and it was painful. I got to be honest. We had found the exact location we wanted to go to. We thought it was a perfect addition to our group, and then they rained on our parade. Our business coach said, "You're not ready." They said, you know, you need to build a little bit more, you need to grow a little bit more, you need to expand your internal working so that you can handle another location. And we were devastated. We knew that if we didn't take that location, it was going to be gone. One of our competitors or somebody would take it, which they actually did. But it was the wisest decision we ever made to listen to our business coach, because we weren't ready. And it would have stressed our internal processes to be able to handle that. And it was just the wrong thing to do at that time. So working with the business coach is critical. I don't care who it is. Frankly, we look to our trusted advisors, our banker, our attorney, and so on to help us with that. But we always reach out to a business coach to try and get support.
And if your next step is wanting to pursue possible franchise ownership, you can go to the website liveitoownit.com, live it to own it, the number 2 there in liveitoownit.com, so you can get a copy of this book and be like Jerry and Jeff and do a parking lot challenge, so you can consider whether a franchise endeavor is right for you, or if you currently own a business, what about expanding and diversifying? Jeff, how does it feel to now be coming to having this come to fruition and know that, like Jerry has done a lot in person, you guys now through this book are going to be able to help so many people who were right where you were 5 years ago?
Yeah, I tell you, it's really an amazing process, because ultimately business is a human, you know, endeavor, and part of being a human is struggling to do things and create things and build things, right? And with that effort comes failure and fear and frustration. Those are all part of the experience, right? But the beautiful thing about franchising is that a lot of that work is taken out of the equation, right? You actually get sort of the instruction manual on how to operate your business. I've done a lot of sessions around the world coaching CEOs that are just starting their careers, right? They're just become the top executive in an organization. And I usually joke with them in the speech that I give, or when I open the session, by saying, do you remember that first day on the job when you walked into your office as CEO and the only book that was on your table, on your desk, was the instruction manual on how to run your business? And what I do is I get a lot of laughter from the CEOs, because they know to a person there's no instructions that comes with running a business like that. But when you start a franchise, right, if you pick the right franchise, you feel comfortable with the people who run it, you feel excited about the brand itself, you get an instruction manual on how it's already worked, in some cases 100, 400, in the case of the Joint Chiropractic, 600 times or 1,000 times with some of the other more successful brands around the world. They know that it works. You just have to follow those and then make it your own in your local community. It's a way to try something without that fear, without that risk that normally you'd have. And in the end, I think the thing that this book really provides is it shares with you some of the pain and frustration and scary times that Jerry and I have had in this process, so that you don't have to go through that, right? There's no need for you to relive the bad stuff. Let's try to get you to that good stuff, as soon as we can, if franchising is right for you, which is really the whole point of this book, helping you make that right decision.
Right. Yeah, and like we've talked about already, we don't talk about any brands in here. We're not here to sell franchise brands. We're here to help you make a decision if franchising is right for you, and then help you walk through that process. And it's not just the process to purchase a franchise, it's also what's going to happen after you purchase it and the steps you'll go through, because truthfully, it's not a business in a box. You're going to be engaged in real estate and all kinds of things you may never have dealt with in the past, and this is going to be a great guide for you as you go through that.
Well, congratulations again to Jerry Akers and Jeff Kaplan. Go to liveitoownit.com. That's liveit2ownit.com to get your copy today, because we know that you are ready to take charge of your future. As we talk about every week on Willing to Win, this is the time in your life to take charge of your career, change your family's legacy, and you can do it with the help and guidance of these two gentlemen right by your side on the pages of Live It to Own It. Thank you so much for joining us.